The Israeli government is rolling out massive contracts to deploy botnets and even your favorite social media influencer to convince you that all those dead Palestinians aren't such a big deal. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about whether or not you should believe the next thing you read on the internet. Hit that subscribe, by the way. And of course, if you want to support me, well, I don't exactly have advertisers beating down my door because I cover some pretty controversial topics. So you can always become a member at combatvetnews.com, right? For free, of course. You can always check here for my latest videos, including the ones the algorithm sort of suppresses. But also, members get access to twice weekly updates, including uncensored combat footage and a Q&A. So the link's in the description. Thanks to you guys that do support me. Now, Israel contracted a U.S. firm called Clocktower X, which is going to, whose job is to generate and deploy content across platforms and help game algorithms and manage AI frameworks to make them more friendly to Israel. Now, this, I think, is actually sort of peak 2025 right here, because Clocktower is supposed to be producing content tailored to Gen Z audiences across platforms like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, podcasts, and other relevant digital and broadcast outlets, with a goal of 50 million impressions per month. This is actually incredibly, they're overpaying for these impressions by like an order of magnitude. But what I think is also funny is that the contract, and this is coming to us from Responsible Statecraft, will even deploy, quote, websites and contents to deliver GPT framing results on GPT conversations. This is crazy because what this is, and this is the first time I've ever seen a country doing it, or anyone do it, is it sounds like the plan is to actually produce a bunch of free content and put it up online with the hope that large language models will train on it. See, Clocktower will integrate its pro-Israel messaging into what it calls the Salem Media Network Properties, a conservative Christian media group boasting a vast radio network, producing high-profile shows like The Hugh Hewitt Show, Larry Elder, and The Right View with Laura Trump. And in April, the Conservative Media Network said that Donald Trump Jr. and Laura Trump were significant stakeholders in the company. Now, this is probably how they're going to do it. Again, by having a bunch of fake and real and semi-real news sites. But the idea is not to produce news for you and me that says that, what Israel's doing to the Palestinians is totally fine and not a problem at all. But that the idea is that these news sites are going to be consumed by large language models, right? Because that large language models have a bunch of issues, right? When they're trained on legitimate news outlets, those legitimate news outlets demand big paydays. They say, listen, you can't just take the articles that a New York Times or Washington Post or New York Post writers spend all this time generating and then just use it for free and spit out our results. You have to pay us. But if you were to find a news outlet that offered you this news for free, you'd probably be happy to feed it into your large language model. And, well, that's basically the game they're trying to play, is to make sure that in terms of free news sources, that they actually are producing these. And sure, the news sources are, going to be stridently pro-Israel and tell you exactly what Israel wants you to believe is happening. And of course, this is just deeply tied in to the president. Again, the president's son and daughter-in-law, major stakeholders in the company. But what's even more fascinating is that former Trump campaign manager Brad Parscale, right? You might remember him from the Cambridge Analytica scandal during Trump's 2016 campaign, is actually the CEO of Clocktower X. And, what do you know it? He's also the new chief strategy officer for the Salem Media Group. Fascinating. In fact, the funny thing is that even though Clocktower X promises a bunch of impressions and a bunch of social media contracts, well, they don't have a website or anything. So it seems like Clocktower X is simply just performatively a shell company that is basically looking to funnel money into this Salem Media Network to help gin up some support for the Israeli actions, right? The state of Israel. And again, I point this out. What's fascinating to me is that among Gen Zers, the support for Israel's actions in Gaza is like 9%. Even among young American Jews, the support for Israel's actions in Gaza is like way underwater. And that is like a red alert situation for Israel, because part of Israel's influence operation in the United States is is convincing American Jews that Israel represents them. Now, you might think that's sort of absurd, right? You would never, for example, just because you're an American Muslim doesn't mean you support every action the Saudi Arabian government takes. That's ridiculous. But the Israeli government works really hard to convince American Jews, particularly American Jews who are wealthy enough to be donors, to operate this way, to believe this and then donate accordingly, right? A big get for them was like Larry Ellison, who, despite donating $0 to the U.S. military, the country he is a citizen of, the country he pays taxes to, the country that allowed him to grow his multi-million dollar business Oracle to make him the richest man on earth, that military has gotten $0 in donations from Larry Ellison. He is the largest individual donor to the Israeli Defense Forces, though. And, the Larry Ellisons of the world donate, write checks to candidates that support Israel in the United States and U.S. Congress. But the fact is that Larry Ellison is like 400 million years old. And when that motherfucker dies, there's no guarantee that the younger generation is going to be as stridently pro-Israel as he is. And again, the younger, the Gen Zers of the world, they may not support Israel at all. So this is a generational crisis for the Israeli government. Now, you may think to yourself, Paul, maybe the Israeli government wouldn't get so much flack if they just stopped killing Gazan kids. But let's be realistic. They're never going to do that. That's not even in the cards for them. And so, of course, they are not alone in simply targeting right-wing networks. They also are targeting left-wing networks and hiring a large Democrat PR firm to run a literal bot army. And this is, again, a FARA document, a Foreign Agents Registration Act document. So, these lobbying firms are just honest. We represent the Israeli state. They have a plan to, quote, flood the zone with social media bots as a part of a $600,000 contract with Israel. And they literally, in the contract, say it's a bot-based program to amplify pro-Israel narratives on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, and other platforms. So again, look in the comments. See if you can find what look like weird pro-Israel bots. And remember, thanks to ChatGPT, those bots are going to be more responsive and more realistic sounding than ever. The insane part is that they're dropping just $600,000 for, again, a bunch of these programs that range from coaching Israel's civil society spokespeople for on-camera appearances, testing the effectiveness of social media influencers, tailoring outreach to journalists at BBC, CNN, Fox, and the AP, and some of the rumors of the paydays going to social media influencers are up to $7,000 to $8,000 a post, which is insane rates. That's something that maybe the largest 1% of influencers can command. That's more than any of my sponsors have ever paid me for a single post. And those are massive paydays to shill for Israel. Right. And the thing is, it sounds like this is not just a one-time thing, right? In May 2024, Al Jazeera found the networks of automated AI-powered superbots were targeting posts by pro-Palestine accounts, replying with pro-Israel messages, and amplifying certain narratives. The bots can respond rapidly and operate around the clock and are increasingly using large language models, making them difficult to distinguish from real users, right? And again, this is, as they point out, this is a lobbying firm that is co-founded by Anita Dunn, a longtime Biden advisor, right? Rotating, where a lot of Democrats who are out of government end up crashing there, right? Justin Goodman, an SDK executive vice president, was communications director for Chuck Schumer. Mike Morey is another Schumer staffer. A lot of these Schumer staffers end up crashing out into these lobbying firms. No shocker there. And it's generally probably a way of, in part, rewarding loyalists, but also to say, hey, this is really what you do, right? If you're a Schumer staffer for a decade, you probably are going to, make a little scratch by using your contacts to advocate for, in this case, the state of Israel. Anyway, guys, hit subscribe. That helps. If you're not a bot, come over and hang out on Combat Vet News. Thanks to Yanko Georgiev, Bastian Himmerly, Michael Fry, Christine Suman, Deborah Holmes, Deborah Oppenheimer, all of our lieutenant tier members. Thank you guys as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.